Should we buy or sell Airbnb? First off, read this disclaimer carefully. And do your good deed of today by liking and subscribing. So we have the megatrends here, and we have a theme that I just call sharing and renting. So here is the theme, 54% from the 52-week low, but we are minus 52% away from the highs. So definitively in a bear market. Airbnb is very interesting. They rent out, it's a place where you can rent out your house. 29% here from the low, and technically in a bear market, minus 21% from the highs. Something that could be disruptive to Airbnb's business is the current mass migration situation we have in Europe due to the war between NATO and Russia. Of course, some would argue that technically speaking, it's not NATO, but given that we do have soldiers from NATO countries that have traveled and are part of a foreign legion in Ukraine, and they are then using NATO weapons to kill Russian soldiers, it's very hard. I don't think that if you ask, the Russian generals whether they are at war with NATO, I'm pretty sure they would say that yes, basically. Anyway, so here it says Norwegian help take in 100,000 refugees from Ukraine. So there's talk about Norway taking in 100,000 refugees. And here it says offer a free stay or heavily discounted stay through Airbnb, and donate to help the financing, such that we can help more people. This is of course very good. It's very good, to help people, obviously. The thing is that, will this have an effect on the share price of Airbnb? I think it makes a lot of sense that the current situation will have a financial impact that is negative. It makes sense, Airbnb themselves, they have changed, their position from being focused on, making money through their company now to running it, at least temporarily, a bit more like a charity. They literally talked about, making it easier to offer, stays for free or heavily discounted. What's interesting is that is not reflected here, I think, sufficiently in the equity price here of Airbnb. One interesting thing we see here is that it has a tendency to have these major time cycles. Then it usually has a smaller one, then a major one, then a smaller one. That is, the standard time cycle. Based on those time cycles, you could argue that maybe the rally we had, the current week, that it was the beginning of a new major time cycle. There is a big of a but though, because it's very obvious from their very own website that the business model will temporarily change. There is currently a resistance level that we need to watch, a bit more closely going forward. That is this purple 20-week moving average. Resistance here, here, here. So it's a level that's watched by a lot of bears. The bulls, they have used that same moving average as a bit of a support level before. So it is a moving average that is watched by both the bulls and the bears, and that increases the probability that it will have an effect. It's important to be aware that this rally here, this peaked towards mid-February, and that was before the breakout in conflict between in Ukraine, and we are 5% away from that. The current market condition for Airbnb is very, very different. So I mean, it's very hard to see how that. It simply doesn't make sense that it's going to go up there, given the current context as we talked about. On here, the daily data points, we do have resistance from the blue 100-day moving average. It's been a big deal level in the past, sometimes surgically. It's also being used by the bulls as well. You see here, the bulls were able to use it. When the bulls got above it, they got very ambitious. And here you have seen that it's a level where there is a demand. But yeah, from a technical perspective, the current thing happening vis-a-vis moving averages is resistance. When we look at these other indicators here, yeah, we don't really have that much data here on the weeklies. We are pretty close RSI-wise from the fail level we had back here. That's a little bit up here. Looking at the daily data points, we are bouncing from a level that has triggered bulls in the past, and you can see that we do have a tendency to explore the higher end of RSI here. But yeah, we did have a higher RSI. So you see that this RSI on the daily data point, this level, that is when it's a good risk reward in terms of shorting the stock. So, and also in terms of the PPOs, we have a tendency to go a bit higher. You see that during this major peak, the distance from the 20-day moving average and 50-day moving average here in green was higher. So let's go here and give this one a bit some ratings. So in terms of the line in the sand, let's say 20 VMA and 100 DMA resistance. Okay, so who gets the technicals? The resistance levels from the moving averages, it is bearish given that it has worked out, quite a few times for the bears in the past. Then again, when we did look at these overbought, excess indicators, like the RSI and the PPO, previous rallies did go higher, so there could be more left here for the bulls. So it's like a battle here between moving averages and the PPO and RSI. I think I will lean a little bit bearish here, but very modest, like literally just -1. We do not get any seasonality data here to the right, simply not being public for enough time for that. We do get some data to the left, but we only get 2 years of data. The data we do have is that April and May are very, very weak. June is very strong. So I'm assuming that we could conclude that June might be strong due to the holiday season. During this holiday season will summer holiday will likely be very disrupted by current military events. So in terms of the seasonality here, we have very little data. We just do. But the data we do have is bearish. It was very bearish, but we have so little data that we can't really jump to conclusions. So I will give this one to the bears, but I can't give them too much either. And given the very limited amount of data, one could even argue that one shouldn't even give a seasonality score here, but I do think that, it could make some kind of case here for seasonality, but yeah, only -2. But if we had these kinds of numbers, and we had like 10 years of data, then I would easily give it like a -8 on seasonality. Here is Airbnb, Saks.com, F value score, 3 hold, B growth, B momentum. Industry rank, top 43%, but a very weird industry, internet content. So yeah. There's no dividend, market cap is 101 billion US dollars. So let's look at what the insiders are doing. They are selling. Oh my gosh, they are really getting out of this stock. Well, it seems like it's Gebbia Joseph that is like dumping shares here. Okay, so let's look at a bit more data. Well, it's a lot of dumping of shares. Yeah, here we do have some other names. So Lynn, Alfred, sell, buy, sell, buy, sell, buy, sell, yeah, a bit more mixed there. So it says C remarks here on Gebbia Joseph. When we have these situations where shares are dumped, it could be that she's quitting or something like that. So that could be the explanation. Okay, anyway, let's look at the consensus estimates. So you do have 38 analysts covering the stock. That's quite a few. Then you have an average 19% price target. Highest is 50% above. Lowest is minus 32% below. Given that there's been some very disruptive news for this company, I think we have to look a bit at what's been happening here. So Deutsche Bank starts Airbnb at hold with $150 price target. Tigers Financial hikes price target from 214 to 214 from 206 on declining COVID rates. So in terms of giving the seasonality here, well, the fundamentals a score. Okay, so one of the issues I have with the price targets is that many of the price targets are based on a time before the war. So the business has just changed very substantially. I do think one could make a strong case that long-term Airbnb is going to benefit from their kind of changing of it temporarily from pure like profit-driven business to operating a bit more charity-ish. They will benefit long-term in that most likely you will have a lot of people who now use Airbnb to just offer housing to Ukrainian refugees. These people in turn will sort of get used to that and might be more likely to use Airbnb in the future. So long term, that could definitively be bullish for Airbnb. Short term, I have a very hard time seeing how it is not very. It must be bearish for a company to go from operating purely profit-based to more like a charity short term. So short term, I will give this -3. In terms of relative performance, we do not have any long-term correlations for Airbnb, so we jump to the daily data points. Here we do have a 58% with S&P 500, 39% with VNQ, and that is the real estate ETF. So a lower correlation with real estate. And then we have 45% positive with Giga, which is the gig economy ETF. Then we have -11% with the dollar index. So the strongest correlation we do have is with the S&P 500. So I think that we just have to analyze then the S&P 500. That's how it works. Correlations are more important than it is correlations are king. So here we have the S&P 500. We definitively have something that looks a whole lot like a topping pattern to me. A bit of a mix between a head and shoulder-ish pattern, also a bit rounding top-ish. But yeah, it's a bearish technical setup. We have gone from the bulls, being in charge, being able to buy the dips, to now you see that the bears have more momentum. So what once was support has now become a resistance. Let's look a bit here at the daily data points. Yeah, so there's a red 200-day moving average. It's been important and in the past, and it's very likely going to offer some kind of resistance going forward. So yeah, definitively watch the 200-day moving average. Looking at the distance from the 20-day moving average here in the PPO, we are literally at the same level that marked previous highs. So here you can see same level on the 20-day PPO, and we did get the pullback. Even when we go back here, if we can find it, that would be here. During this rally, we did see a correction down to the 50-day moving average. So you have moving average resistance here right above us, and you do have some readings here on the Yeah, an overbought reading on the 20-day PPO. What is a bit funny is that looking at accumulation distribution, we do actually have a new high. So money is flowing into American stocks. So yeah, you most likely have money, fleeing Russia and various European countries and fleeing into America. But it is very important to be aware that the most successful people ever in the financial markets, they have a tendency to buy fear and sell the greed. So I think that a lot of the money that's been just fleeing into America now, that's a bunch of like cheap fund managers. Anyway, so here we have the relationship between Airbnb and the S&P 500. So yeah, it's a bit of a messy relationship. There's not like any clean pattern. We don't have like a clean horizontal support level, nor any kind of like rounding bottom, inverse head and shoulders, or yeah, it from a pattern perspective, it's a bit noisy. Here as well with the daily data points, it used to have these time cycles. So if we draw that in like that, so there used to be like a bit, somewhat of a bigger time cycles, but they have been broken up a bit. We do not get any seasonality data. I do want to give it a 0, but I'm not a fan of giving zeros because I like to sort of push myself to actually make a decision, because that's how you learn. So yeah, I like to either be bullish, well, lean bullish or lean bearish. If you look at like analyst price targets and stuff like that, you see a lot of people who just stick to the middle, classically reflected through the hold rating, which is yeah, I just think that's just cowardice. Yeah, so where do I lean here? So that's the thing. So the S&P 500, I think you could make a pretty strong case that there's reason to expect some resistance ahead. The 200-day moving average, it's going to be a bit of a challenge. But of course, if we do get some, very good news about, the Ukraine situation, that will be bullish, and that will also help Airbnb. But that's more hypothetical. I think I will lean just timidly bearish here, -1. So we do end up with a score here of -1.8. So the data is more supportive of bearish thesis than bullish. So yeah, I think that all things considered, long term, Airbnb is going to benefit from what they have recently done. Short term, most likely going to have, temporarily a more bearish effect on the stock price.